new evacuation orders are in effect.
This happened just, I think, like 4 or 5 hours ago, late last night in Beirut.
In Lebanon's capital, as Israel's military vows to keep hitting Hezbollah targets. Lebanese authorities report dozens of people were killed on Thursday, more than 1,400 in the past few weeks. And we're following a brand new development. Lebanon says an Israeli strike on a key border crossing with Syria has cut off access to the international road. Tens of thousands of people fleeing the fighting in Lebanon have used the crossing over the past few weeks. That video you're seeing there is from Beirut. A source tells CNN the IDF targeted Hashem Safiaddin with a strike on the Lebanese capital. He's seen as a possible successor to Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, who was killed in an airstrike last week. Now, his fate is unclear. Israel says it struck Hezbollah's intelligence headquarters in Beirut and killed several Hezbollah commanders in southern Lebanon. The IDF says its goal is to eliminate Hezbollah's threat to the residents of northern Israel.
We will not allow Hezbollah to settle itself in these places in the future. The severe blows against Hezbollah in all areas in Beirut, in the Bekaa Valley, in South Lebanon will continue.
Tens of thousands of people have fled their homes in Lebanon. The UN says about 160,000 have crossed into Syria. Humanitarian agencies say shelters are full and overflowing, and health workers say they're overwhelmed. CNN's Ivan Watson is standing by with more on the growing refugee crisis. But first, Paula Hancock's with the latest on Israel's military campaign. And Paula, on the targeting of Nasrallah's possible successor, what are we learning?
Yeah, so Kim, this was an Israeli airstrike which targeted Nasrallah's cousin. He was also considered to be a potential key successor to Nasrallah. Hashem Safiaddin, he was the head of the executive council within Hezbollah as well. So a very key figure that many had assumed could well take over the reins of Hezbollah. Now, we know at this point that there was a significant airstrike against him. The Israelis saying that they were targeting him. We do not know at this point, though, whether or not he was killed in that strike itself. Hezbollah always does admit and acknowledge when its fighters and its members are killed, so we'll wait to hear about that. We do know that 37 Lebanese were killed in the past 24 hours, and some 151 were injured. There were more airstrikes.
Let's missile strike the middle of a capital for one person. Okay.
Overnight within the...
What did she say the casualty was for that?
Hear about that. We do know that 37 Lebanese were killed.
Yeah, we only had to kill 37 Lebanese people. Yeah. That's more than some people's entire families. Probably most of you in here, unless you have a uniquely large family. That's like you and your entire family. Just, yeah, it's fine. Precision strike.
In the past 24 hours, and some 151 were injured. There were more airstrikes overnight within the southern suburbs. There were some evacuation orders given by the Israeli military saying that they were going to target particular buildings and that people should move about 500 meters away from those buildings. But many of those evacuation orders came during the night when potentially many people were sleeping. Now, we've heard from the Israeli military that this will continue. You heard from the IDF chief there saying that they have to destroy Hezbollah's capabilities along the border to make sure that tens of thousands of Israelis can move back to their homes in northern Israel. Of course, this has moved far beyond the border. This is in Beirut, the capital, as well. They are still claiming it is a localized and a limited operation, but we do know that at least one other battalion has moved from the south to the northern border, and that could potentially be about 10,000 more soldiers. So the skepticism of Israel saying it was limited now appears to be realized. Kim?
All right, and Ivan, obviously Israel's attacks are having a devastating effect on the civilians there. What more can you tell us?
Right. Well, Kim, the Lebanese Red Cross has just put out an urgent appeal for blood donations. This is as the number of casualties continues to grow. The World Health Organization says that, for example, in the last 24 hours alone, some 28 healthcare workers have been killed. They say that in Beirut, 3 hospitals have been forced to fully evacuate staff and patients, and 2 others were partially evacuated. And meanwhile, in the south of Lebanon, at least 37 health facilities have been closed. Take a listen to a nurse at a hospital in Beirut, what he has to say about the kind of injuries he's seeing coming into that hospital doors.
The cases coming to the hospital are sometimes beyond what we can handle. They are so terrifying and horrifying. Some with the hand blown off, others with the leg gone, some with their heads blown off. There are stories that are so heartbreaking that even a stone would cry.
Now, we also need to acknowledge that there are more than 1 million people in Lebanon who've been displaced by the Israeli onslaught, starting from the southern areas when the Israeli bombardment first began, and now people fleeing from places like the densely populated southern suburbs of Beirut as well. Now, we've just heard from a Lebanese government minister that the main road leading up to the main
1 million? Yeah, 1 million people have been displaced. Someone talked about recently the Israel's attacks in Lebanon and Israel's attacks on Beirut taking away from Gaza. And I said something along the lines of, no, I think it does the opposite, because it's a constant reminder of all the stuff that's happening in Gaza. The 1 million people getting displaced and the people that are in Beirut or in Lebanon in general that can leave because there are airports, I think highlight the fact that the people in Gaza literally can't leave. That I don't think it is a distraction. I don't think it takes away from it. I think it highlights how, even as bad as what's happening in Lebanon, even all of the atrocities occurring right now in Lebanon and Beirut, I think all they do, I mean, not all they do, but I think they help highlight how the people in Gaza are even worse off than that, because they're stuck and they can't do anything. Breaks my heart. U.S. media is cheering this and completely forgetting about Palestinians. Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, CNN, why would they ever do it, right?
Land border crossing between Lebanon and Syria has been hit, and that road has been cut off. We don't know how long that is going to last for. Western governments are trying to evacuate their citizens. They're trying to arrange additional flights for ordinary Lebanese who don't have the means or the visas to travel to other countries or can't squeeze themselves onto one of these sold-out flights. The Syrian border is the only real land border that people can escape through. More than 160,000 people have crossed through there in just the last about 2 weeks, and now that appears to be closed. And, you know, in full transparency, Kim, my own in-laws, who are all displaced from their homes by the Israeli bombardment, we were discussing the possibility that they might try to escape the deadly Israeli bombardment, aerial bombardment, to try to go through Syria to Jordan. That door appears to have closed, and people are being stuck while fleeing their homes inside.
This is like the most progressive I've seen CNN be. I forgot for a second that it was CNN.
Lebanon. A big difference between what has happened in Lebanon and in Gaza with the Israeli assault there for nearly a year that has killed more than 40,000 Palestinians is Gaza is so much smaller. Lebanon is a much larger country, but civilian families are frightened and looking for places to hide from these deadly aerial bombardments.
Palestinians, Fred Pleitgen is following that live from Berlin. It's interesting, isn't it, Fred, seeing the response there, but also anticipating what he might say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it certainly is no coincidence, Max, that the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is leading those Friday prayers today. The last time that he actually did that was in 2020, when a U.S. airstrike, of course, killed the then commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Quds Force, Qasem Soleimani, who, of course, was very important to Iran's military apparatus. And so now, as far as those memorial services for Hassan Nasrallah, as part of these Friday prayers is concerned, the Supreme Leader, once again today, will be on the scene to speak at these Friday prayers. And we can already see, we have some of the shots there, just how large the crowds are that have turned out so far. I've been at that facility many times for Friday prayers. I have not ever seen a crowd of that size. In fact, I think the last time that there was a crowd of that size was probably the funeral for Qasem Soleimani. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind, Max, is that the bond between Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and Hassan Nasrallah was a lot stronger than I think many people realize. One of the things that we have to keep in mind.
I'm listening while biking. I literally had to stop to open the stream and check if this was Al Jazeera. Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I'm honestly kind of shocked. Honestly shocked. Sincere question. The despair is really hitting me with all this today. How do you manage your emotions around this in a year where when it's only getting worse? I mean, I don't know if this is the best advice, but I think about the fact that the people who actually have to live through this are suffering 100 times worse than I am. And if the least I can do is talk about it and bring more attention to it and be aware of what's happening, and I'm hopefully going to do, I don't want to spoil anything or make any suggestions, so you guys will see. I want to do something soon-ish that I think would be good for everyone involved. When I think about that, it like makes me harden my resolve on it, I guess, because it is such a privilege to live in the U.S. With all of the problems that exist in the U.S., it is such a privilege to live in the U.S. and know that other countries cannot just openly bombard you. Like just in general, the percent chance that another country would try and go to war with us, like genuinely try and go to war with us, is so small because of our military capabilities and because we try our hardest to not give any money to the people that live here. Gotta watch out for Canada, though, yeah. And I mean, even like if you live in like most European countries, or if you live in Canada, right? You are in a very privileged position that this is just not something that you worry about on a day-to-day basis. And when I think about that, it's like, it puts things in perspective a little bit, and it becomes a little bit harder to get overwhelmed. That's why 9/11 was so shocking for Americans. Yeah. Being surrounded by oceans helps a lot. I mean, of course, yeah. So, I don't know. I think that the people in Lebanon, especially the people in Gaza, they want people to know what's happening. They want you to not forget or ignore what's happening. And even if we can just get everyone on the same page on that, I feel like it's important, and I feel like it's worthwhile. And also take time to like plug out and stuff. Like go talk to friends, go do things once in a while that bring you joy, right? Reaching out and making a friend in Gaza actually really helped me. Being in community with people in a movement makes things seem a bit more hopeful. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So.
Is that between Qasem Soleimani, the slain general, Hassan Nasrallah, and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, there was a major bond that was formed during the time of the Israeli incursion into Lebanon in 2006. In fact, the three wrote a book together later, with a massive part of that book dealing with that 2006 incursion. So certainly there was a very special place for Hassan Nasrallah with the supreme leader. Certainly there was a lot of support, of course, also from Iran for Hezbollah. And the Iranians are saying that that continues. And of course, course, we did have that major strike on Israeli territory by the Iranians happening not after the Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was killed in Tehran, but after Hassan Nasrallah was then also killed in Beirut. And I think the Iranians are showing just how big a thing the killing of Hassan Nasrallah was for them. And of course, the Iranians also trying to display the power of their missile forces that they have. And one of the interesting caveats in all of this is that the same department of the Revolutionary Guard Corps that's responsible for Iran's missile force is also responsible for Iran's air defense systems, which of course right now are on high alert as the Iranians anticipate some sort of Israeli response that could happen. Of course, there are people who've been talking about possibly the nuclear facilities of Iran being under threat, but then also oil and gas installations as well. In any case, I would say right now that Iran's surface-to-air missile systems certainly on high alert.
Yeah. I also wanted to watch this. This happened a few hours ago. Israel targets Hezbollah's possible new leader, and I think Iran's supreme leader had a speech. I'm not sure if this one covers the speech as well, but okay, I think it's this one.
Because live now to Tehran, where the Iran Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is leading Friday prayers. He's delivering a rare public sermon and speech. Let's listen in.
It is part and parcel of the solidarity among the believers, among all those who believe. It resonated throughout many parts of our Holy Scripture. However, this particular verse speaks about of the ultimate consequence of our solidarity as one Muslim nation. It is the mercy. God will grant us mercy, which means if we are standing together, side by side, joining hands, joining forces, we will be granted mercy from God. The verse ends with that God is all-knowing, all the wise. This is the end of the verse. God is knowing and is wise. This particular verse of the Holy Scripture speaks of the consequence of our solidarity. The consequence is mercy. We will be granted mercy, and that is the wisdom. All the blessings, all the incidents of throughout our human life are nothing but mercy, and such mercy is linked to God's grace and wisdom.
You're watching Al Jazeera. It is 08:33 GMT. We're bringing you live pictures from Tehran, where Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is leading Friday prayers. It's a rare occasion for him to do so, particularly to speak as we are expecting him to after the public sermon. This is, of course, following a massive missile attack which Iran has carried out recently on Israel, but, of course, also following the killing of Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of the Lebanese armed movement Hezbollah, just a few days ago. We are expecting Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to make reference to the killing and the events in Lebanon and elsewhere across the region in the speech that we are waiting for, which should come in the next few minutes. I want to go to Rasul Sada, who is live for us in Tehran. This is a moment of extreme tension, of course, between Iran and also Israel. And this is a moment of which a lot of people are going to be paying a great deal of attention to what Iran's supreme leader is going to be saying.
Indeed, Rob. So that is happening in quite a delicate and very much intense.
Wait, sorry. Quick pause. There's a chatter. Population of Gaza went up massively over the last 40 years, though, hasn't it? I'm not even going to bother addressing that. Can anyone here give me... Sorry, I will address it. Part of the reason why is because there is a lack of medical supplies and there is a lack of infrastructure in the nation. Part of what is considered medical supplies is things like birth control. If you prevent nations from receiving supplies freely, they will have less supplies. Contraception is an important thing that people in wealthier nations have access to. And you could look at any country across the board. Poorer nations have higher rates of childbirth, and richer nations tend to have lower rates of childbirth. If you impoverish a nation, limit the supplies that enter that nation, they are going to have a higher birth rate. This does not surprise me even a little, and it's crazy that it surprises anyone. It's crazy that anyone thinks that this is something worth saying. It's so obvious. It feels like saying, oh my God, if you don't drink water, you'll be dehydrated. It's like, what? I don't know, like what? There's no genocide or attempted genocide because poorer nations and poorer people have more children. That's ridiculous. That's like, it's insane to me. Anyone here, can anyone here give me an outsider perspective on why Israel shouldn't do this when the alternative seems to be just keep getting attacked themselves? They shouldn't do this because it doesn't solve their problem. If their stated goal is we want to eliminate Hamas, slaughtering people in Palestine only gives legitimacy to Hamas. This is not an absurd concept. This is very, very simple. If I put you in an open air prison and I told you you are not allowed to leave, you are not allowed to have building materials to fix the buildings that were destroyed when we bombarded your home because we were getting the Hamas tunnels. You do not have any, right now anyways, any internet, any phones, TV, any connection to the outside world, no food, no water, no clean water, no medical supplies, and we're going to keep bombarding you until we get every Hamas member, the chance of you joining Hamas rises like 100% than if you had just not, if Israel had just not bombarded the shit out of your country or out of your region or out of your city. Like, why do extremists join extremist organizations? Because they see no other way of achieving their goals, because they see no peaceful method. I implore you to look at the peaceful march to return in 2018. These people have tried to be peaceful. You can, like, even a worm will turn. I get the impression that Muslims would still hate them and try and kill them, even if they gave them equal rights. It would just be easier if the societies were more integrated. This is just like bad talking points. This is just like, well, if we free the slaves, they're going to rise up and kill all the white slave owners. You can't oppress a people because you think that they would do the same to you if given the opportunity. This is also something that, this was also a talking point in, surprise, surprise, Nazi Germany. Yeah, well, the Jews hate us. And if given the opportunity, they would do some nefarious shit to us. You can't justify killing and injuring and starving millions of, well, starving in reference to millions of people, but tens of thousands and potentially hundreds of thousands of people, and try and justify it even a little bit by saying, Yeah, but they hate us, so, and they would try and kill us, so. Also, like, the polling data doesn't suggest this. The polling data that we have in Gaza, the polling data that we have in West Bank, it doesn't suggest this. This, like, alleged hatred that Arab people just have, that these, sorry, Muslims, that these violent Muslims have, the polling data doesn't even show this. UN polling, by the way. So I hope that goes over all of the important things. I don't get how you can get to like this point where you can think that like these people need to be oppressed because of X, Y, and Z, or
Plus, you could turn that logic around and ask why we can let Israel survive if it just means more shelling of the Middle East.
Yep. Yep. Imagine a school bully using that kind of thinking. If I stop bullying this kid, he's going to bully me back, so I have to keep bullying him. Do people forget or just not read the history when Muslims actually saved Jewish people from Christians who were trying to genocide the Jews? Yeah. I mean, a lot of Americans especially don't understand the role that Muslim nations played against the Holocaust. Many Muslim nations who had Jewish people living in their regions, surprise, surprise, a lot of Jewish people and a lot of Muslim people live in the same-ish areas, took a lot of these people in and protected these people and tried to protect them from European prosecution. But it's an unheard of concept, and people just assume Muslims, they obviously hate Jews. It's like, okay. They also don't know how Italian, French, German aristocrats stoked anti-Jewish sentiment, or the papacy and its stupidity leading to the pogroms. They don't even know about Spanish forced conversions, expulsions, murders. Yeah. Yeah. Those are not standard American history lessons. Yeah. And this doesn't even talk about the fact that the region that we know of as Palestine had plenty of Jews and Muslims living together without issues. There wasn't this mass, persistent murder of the Jews by the evil Muslims in these regions. But this is because, or people don't know this. Also, what? You talking 300 years back? Not really relevant? What are you talking about? I'm literally talking about the Holocaust and Muslim nations taking in Jewish refugees. What are you talking about? 300 years back. The problem is that Americans are super brainwashed, and Europeans now too, sadly, are super brainwashed into thinking that like Muslims are like naturally evil and violent, and their religion tells them that they need to be evil and violent, and they don't know anything about what Muslim teachings are like and what Islam teaches and what it doesn't teaches. They see extremists and then they judge everyone else by those extremists. But that would be the equivalent of me looking at evangelicals and being like, every Christian is like this. They can't help it. This is just how they are. The evangelical Christians who show up at abortion clinics holding up signs saying you're going to hell, that's just what Christians are like. That's just what Catholics are like. They're all like this. And that's not accurate. You can take any religion and find extremists and then find everyone else. Also, yeah, if 300 years back isn't relevant, then Israel's claim to their ancient land is also irrelevant as well. Yeah. And I've shared it before, but like, I think the problem is that a lot of people, especially Americans, don't actually know any Muslim people or know any people who grew up Muslim. and say that, so they don't know what the inside or like personal perspective is like. And they don't know that, I'm going to say something crazy, most Muslims are not trying to start a holy war and kill all of the Jews and Christians. They're just like minding their own business. When was the last time that you had a Jehovah's Witness at your door trying to convert you? When was the last time you had a Muslim person at your door trying to convert you? Like, most Muslim people, surprise, just want to live in peace. And again, you can see there's a lot of data on the polling in the West Bank and in Gaza that suggests the same. But yeah. Generally speaking, if you had to change something about how the pro-Gaza activists were operating, what would you recommend to them? Nothing. I'm not particularly in the business of tone policing protesters that are protesting for something that I deem worthwhile, that is for a good cause. And even if on a personal level I had something, I just don't. I don't really have anything or any opinions about what I think that the pro-Gaza protesters, I mean, anti-genocide, I think is more accurate, but yeah. Okay. I wanted to go back to the live footage because I know that the situation is currently unfolding right now.
Hamas. Year into Israel's genocide in Gaza, conflict is now impacting millions of people in the region. This hour, we continue our special coverage of the war that has killed more than 41,000 Palestinians.
Sorry, I have to address something really quickly. Obviously, it's not all Muslims, but there's a lot of extremist Islamism, isn't there? And Israel could easily see themselves destroyed by this if the tide turns on them, ? Do you know how many Muslim people are on this planet? Last time I checked, it was like close to 2.5 billion Muslim people on this planet. Muslim population. No, not global. It's okay. It's 2 billion currently. 2 billion. And point how many zeros? 1% are extremist? There's a few, what? Tens of thousands, maybe few, maybe 100 of thousands religious extremists. And what a shocker, every single region that has a religious extremist problem, a religious Muslim extremist problem, all of those regions and countries have been invaded by Western powers. And a lot of those regions and countries had their religious paramilitary faction that eventually rose to power funded by Western powers. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that Hamas received funding from Israel to help it get into power to justify the genocide in Gaza. People don't know that half of the extremist powers that rise are because we put them there, we being Western nations, to justify our violence against them. Most of these groups were propped up by the West vis-a-vis Egyptian, Saudi intelligence. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We train them, give them guns, literally send them money, cash in bags. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyways, going back to the live coverage. Again, it's a lot easier to point at the evil Muslims and be like, see, it's because the religion is wrong and they're extremists and we never did anything to them. But shit is more complicated than that, bro. People don't join factions where they're going to get themselves killed for fun. Nobody is on their way from work. Like, here's the best example. People do not fight for better wages when they are already being given good wages. When people are being treated fairly by their employers, they don't randomly decide, you know what, everybody, let's protest and unionize. That doesn't happen. People don't throw away their lives and throw away the things that are great about their life to go join a religious extremist organization.
Mike Shuley, I had some crazy thoughts on my way home from work, though.
It's just not, this is just not what's, it's just not what's happening. This is just not what people do. And if you can understand how material conditions impact Americans or how material conditions impact Europeans, you can understand how material conditions impact brown people too. But anyways, let's go.
Or both parents, and often other relatives too. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, entire families have been wiped off the civil registry. Killed, orphaned, but also...
no, not this.
He's met with the caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati in Beirut. Arakchi called for a simultaneous ceasefire in both Lebanon and in Gaza. He also vowed a harsh response if Israel strikes Iran in retaliation to the missile barrage it launched towards Tel Aviv on Tuesday.
We have no plans to attack Israel again unless...
And this stuff makes it worse. I just want to show support and dip people Palestine.
Thanks, Big McLarge. Thank you. You do what you have to.
The Zionist regime decides to continue its attacks. If Israel takes any steps against Iran, our response will be stronger, and we will respond to them in a completely proportionate and well-studied manner.
Iran's supreme leader has also delivered a public sermon to crowds in the Iranian capital, praising the country's missile strike on Israel earlier this week. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei described the strikes as legal and legitimate. Iran fired about 200 ballistic missiles at several sites in Israel late on Tuesday. Khamenei called for unity across the Muslim world against Israeli aggression. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israeli raids there and shelling have killed 29 Palestinians across the Strip since dawn. Israel has launched heavy airstrikes on central Gaza, killing 5 people in the Al Bureij refugee camp. Among them were a woman and a child. The Israeli attack on the Al Salti neighborhood, a residential area in Beit Lahia, has killed at least 1 person in northern Gaza. And then fighter jets have carried out an airstrike in Tulkarem in the occupied West Bank, killing 18 Palestinians there. Israeli airstrikes targeted a cafe full of people. The military says that they've killed the local Hamas commander, but this is something that hasn't been confirmed by the group. A general strike has been declared across the occupied West Bank. Israeli forces have intensified their raids on the area since the war on Gaza started, killing at least 721 Palestinians. Well, also in the occupied East Jerusalem area, Israeli forces have stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound just as Muslims were observing their Friday prayers. They prevented worshippers from attending the holy site. Israeli forces have regularly stormed the mosque compound.
Sorry, I was eating some food. I don't want to interrupt the broadcast. Telling you, killed just 1 member of my family and I'll go Batman on you. So how do people expect those who have lost tens of families to do? Like, Americans love to dream and have like day fantasies about how there's a home invader and they have to take out their gun and kill them to protect their family. But when it comes to Palestinians in Gaza losing everything, their home, their family, they don't have food, they don't have clean water, they don't have medical supplies, they have nothing. And you think none of them, all of them are meant to just be like, no, you don't understand. If I do anything wrong, Israel gets to continue to genocide us. So I have to be perfect. If I have to starve to death to show everyone that some brown people are good, I guess I will. That's insane. Like, that's crazy. And to be clear, in case it's not obvious, analysis is not justification. At no point is anyone cheering on any of the Israelis who died on October 7th. I would actually like 0 innocent people to die. I actually don't want civilians dying, actually. I don't want that to happen. I don't want to see those people die. Just as a notion, just as a concept. But it's talking about the fact, this conversation is more centered around the fact that you cannot expect people to get persecuted forever and do nothing. I mean, how many people in here fail to be the bigger person in conversations? Because it's like, no, fuck that guy. He's wrong, dude. What? I'm not gonna kiss this guy's ass. He's so fucking wrong. And do you think when your whole family is dead and your house is gone and you have nothing, you will still maintain your powerful values and be a good person and never, ever be violent ever? It's just, it's so ridiculous. If you create the environment for a military faction to rise up, a military faction will rise up. It's very clear, and it's what Israel wanted because it lets them justify their attacks on Gaza.
Time.
Oh, sorry, wrong video. Okay.
Compound, but the frequency of these raids has increased since the war on Gaza started. Now, Israel is saying that it's killed two of its soldiers have been killed in a drone strike in the occupied Golan Heights. The drones were fired from Iraq. So we'll speak to Mahmoud Abdul Wahid in Baghdad in just a moment. First, though, let's head to Hamdas Al-Hout, who's in Amman, Jordan, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside Israel. What is the army saying about these troops who've been killed in the occupied Golan Heights?
Okay, last chat message. Why are you so obsessed with this conflict? Are you Palestinian or do you just hate Hebrews? 1, I know this is bait. It has to be bait. 2, I'm taking the bait. I actually don't have to be personally involved to care about people getting genocided. When I find out something bad is happening to a group of people, it actually is fine that I don't get impacted. I can still care that that is happening. Also, in this particular instance, I live in the country and pay taxpayer dollars to the country.
Thanks for talking to me at TwitchCon.
That is actively funding the genocide. My money gets to go to bombs that kill people. I'm allowed to be upset at what my country does. Israel has the right to defend. Palestinians started this war by killing 300 people on concert. Oh, all right, now they're bait. Now it's bait. Now it's bait. Okay, no more bait taking. Chat, you can play with your food. Feel free to.
Well, the Israeli military has confirmed that 2 Israeli soldiers, along with 24 others, were killed after the Islamic resistance in Iraq launched a drone that landed at a military base in the occupied Golan Heights. Now, according to Israeli Army radio, there were 2 drones that were launched late Wednesday night and made their way to Israel in the early hours of Thursday morning, one of which was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force, but the second one actually managed to make impact. The Islamic resistance in Iraq has carried out quite a few attacks over the last year, but this is the first one that has caused any casualties in Israel. The military says that they had conducted an initial probe in the matter and that they will release further findings from their investigation after they're completed.
Okay, thank you very much, Hamda Salhout and Aman Jordan. Mahmoud Abdul Wahid is in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Any word from coming from Iraq about these projectiles that were launched at Israeli targets? What are we hearing from Baghdad?
Well, the Islamic resistance in Iraq says that it has targeted 3 different locations in 3 separate operations. One of them in the Golan Heights, the second one in Tabariya, the third inside the occupied Palestinian lands, as the statement by the Islamic resistance says. They say that they have targeted all these locations with drones. They have been targeting actually Israeli sites and also U.S. sites for the past year, since the beginning of Israel's military campaign on Gaza on October the 7th last year. But what is different about this operation? What is different about this operation is that this is the first time casualties are announced by Israel in regard to operation carried out by Iraq's Islamic resistance. In the statement, they say that this attack is in retaliation for the genocide, for the murdering of children and women by Israeli forces in both Gaza and Lebanon. They're vowing to continue their attacks against Israel's sites and locations until the genocides in Gaza and Lebanon stops, as the statement says. But as you know, that the Islamic resistance, an umbrella group that includes about 5 armed groups affiliated or aligned with Iran. They have several types of drones, and they have been actually attacking Israeli and U.S. Military sites in the region, from Eilat port in southern Israel to the Golan Heights in the north of Israel for the past year. But again, what is different this time is that this is the first time casualties of an operation carried out by Iraq's Islamic resistance are announced by Israel.
Okay.
Peanut butter, thank you for the 6 months.
Thank you very much. From Baghdad, Mahmoud Abdul Wahid. We go to Yemen now, where Houthi-affiliated media are reporting that at least a dozen airstrikes have taken place across the country there. 4 air attacks were reported in the capital, Sana'a. There was another strike on the city of Damar. So these were some of the scenes in the port city of Hodeidah. 7 airstrikes reported at the airport and in the Khatib area. The Houthis blame the attacks on the US and the UK, who are yet to respond. Well, there is much more to bring you after a quick break. We are a year into Israel's genocide in Gaza. Conflict is now impacting millions of people.
I'm so glad that Al Jazeera actually calls it a fucking genocide. One of the only fucking news networks to do it. Yeah. I wanted to, against my best interest, and probably not a great idea, I wanted to watch the sorry, I got distracted by this Daily Show episode. Maybe we'll watch that. The Fox News coverage on the Israeli targeting Hezbollah leadership.
Now to a Fox News alert. You are looking live at Beirut. Let's look together. After Israeli airstrikes continue their air campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Specific sites, it seems, from intelligence gained on the ground. The IDF's overnight strikes reportedly targeting Hezbollah's possible successor to terrorist leader Hassan Nasrallah a cousin of his. Here to react is on the latest in real time, General Jack Keane. General, judging by those attacks, it's clear the intelligence is still strong amongst the IDF, correct?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I mean, what's going on in Lebanon with Hezbollah? They have three things they're doing. One is they're dismantling systematically their leadership, and we've seen the evidence of that clearly for the last 3 weeks. And here is the so-called successor, hasn't been announced yet, Hassan Sufeddin. As you said, he's the cousin in Nasrallah. He is a founder of Hezbollah. He goes all the way back to 1982. His son is married to Qasem Soleimani's daughter. He has been embedded in this for years and is very close to Iran and the supreme leader. They're going to keep doing this. They've taken out their senior leaders. They've taken down operational leaders like the rocket and missile commander, and they've killed a number of their tactical leaders, because the second mission they're going after in Lebanon is the rocket and missile force. We can only speculate, but about a week and a half ago, I was told by Israelis they had taken down about 30% of the rocket and missile force. I suspect they're probably close to 50% by now. And clearly that is really what they're after, because that's the weapon that can hurt them inside Israel. And then the third thing, Brian, is the ground campaign that's taken place. They're attacking on two axes. What they're trying to do is eliminate the threat at the border, the rocket and missile threat at the border, and the potential for an invasion like Hamas did on October the 7th. They've got paratroopers, commandos, and armor forces involved in that. They're working on two axes. They've committed a division to it. They've got two other divisions in standby, which will likely get committed. It'll take a number of weeks for them to accomplish this mission.
Wow.
I hate you, Jack Keane. I hate you. This is my least favorite type of American. These people are the reason why I want to hate America. These fucking warmongering pieces of shit. This guy played a big role in why we even got into war with Iraq. These are the type of Americans that think, well, the United States is different. We are allowed to do whatever the fuck we want. And if you don't like it, well, too bad. You should have been from the US. It's just numbers to these fuckers. Brown people in a brown nation? No. Those are just numbers. Those are just numbers. Warhawk nonsense? Yeah. Fucking hate this guy. Seppi watching news in 2024. Yeah.
Now let's talk Iran. So 180 rockets, missiles into Israel. It's time for a response. They promised a harsh response. They're coordinating with the U.S. Here is what President Biden recommended when asked.
We're in discussion of that. I think that would be a little, anyway.
What are the plans to allow Israel to strike back against Iran?
First of all, we don't allow Israel. We advise Israel, and there's nothing going to happen today. We'll talk about that later.
Good old Biden. Good old Biden. I feel like it's been ages since I've listened to Biden speaking. Good to see that he's still hitting us with we're working on it. Anyway. I did the NATO.
Why he never talks to the press, but he says, don't hit the nuclear sites. We're considering hit the oil sites, and nothing's happening today. General, what's he thinking?
General, what is the president thinking when he says we shouldn't hit the nuclear sites? When we shouldn't what is he thinking when he says we shouldn't hit Iran's nuclear power sites? What is he thinking? What is he thinking? I know that, like, Iran has said multiple times in the past, 4 days, that they will pledge a stronger retaliation if Israel strikes Iran, basically guaranteeing another war. Iran's foreign minister says he supports efforts for a regional ceasefire with Israel, also warning Tel Aviv that if it carries out an attack on Iran, Tehran will retaliate in a harsh way. I know we've heard this nonstop in the past 3 days, But what was the president thinking? What was he thinking when he said we shouldn't strike their nuclear power sites? What was he thinking?
Well, that's outrageous that we talk in a public forum like that, you know, that he's trying to take nuclear attack sites off the table, which obviously gives the Iranians, you know, they can balance, you know, what they're going to defend based on that. And there's still some risk involved because Netanyahu could do it anyway. But why play into the Iranians' hands? But we've seen this before. I mean, the micromanaging.
Why play into the Iranians' hand? By not bombing their nuclear power plant. Amazing. Also, they said that if they strike Iran's oil infrastructure, they will attack every country in the region's ability to produce oil. Why would the president not want Israel to attack Iran, the country that threatened to hurt the global oil market? It could be any. It must be that he's weak. I fucking hate these war hawks. I hate these guys. This is like, and the worst part is there's a million Jack Kings.
Operation in Gaza, who did that help? That helped Hamas. And here we are helping the Iranians. So our audience understands. I believe, and so does the Israelis who I talked to, they certainly believe that Iran is vulnerable. And why is that? And they're somewhat back on their heels. Well, there are two major proxies.
Back on their heels. Okay.
Where they make all their investment are being systematically dismantled. The military effectiveness of Hamas is dramatically reduced. And you can see what's happening in Hezbollah, and we just talked about it. That is a big deal. And what Netanyahu is going for here, he's not going for stop the fighting. He's going for the win. And that, I think, is what he should be pursuing. The second thing is that Iran...
The win, a.k.a. killing as many innocent people as possible.
Conventional force is overwhelmingly weak. Their rocket and missile force is the strongest part of their conventional force. But look at two major attacks, and they've had difficulty having any consequential results from those two major attacks using rockets and missiles into Israel. And the third thing is the overwhelming majority of the Iranian people are so fed up with this regime. They've been living with it for 40-something years. They have nothing to show for it. They're continually oppressed. They can't speak out. Their human rights are being denied on a regular basis every day.
We got to go back. I'm so sorry.
And they've had difficulty having any consequential result. Just that. And that, I think, is what he should be pursuing. The second thing is that Iran's conventional force is overwhelmingly weak. Their rocket and missile force is the strongest part of their conventional force. But look at two major attacks, and they've had difficulty having any consequential results from those two major attacks using rockets and missiles into Israel. And the third thing is the overwhelming majority of the Iranian people are so fed up with this regime. They've been living with it for 40-something years. They have nothing to show for it. They're continually oppressed. They can't speak out. Their human rights are being denied on a regular basis.
I wonder who did that. I wonder why Iran's current power is a religious military faction. How did that happen? Oh, it's that brown people are naturally religious, violent freaks, and they put them in power despite no other intervention at all.
Every day. It doesn't take much to spark this thing. And Netanyahu and his team knows it. I think that's why they want to hurt Iran, make them weaker as a result of it, and create, not overnight, but create a spark and a foundation for an eventual significant civil unrest as a result of it.
And
Bro thinks this is a board game. I mean, a lot of Americans, and especially American war criminals, think it is a board game. Because they just get to sit in their fucking thrones and they get to not have to care about the consequences. And who cares if a few more brown people die?
we all know the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, others are clapping about this because they despise Iran too. And their silence says a lot. Thanks so much, General. This is an historic time thanks to Israel's prowess. This is an opportunity to destroy our enemy.
Whether Westerners caused it, would it not be a good thing to get rid of those oppressive leaders? Bro, look at Afghanistan, man. There's a reason a lot of South American countries do everything they can to make sure American troops are not on their fucking soil. It's because America doesn't fix things in other countries. Our track record on fixing things, it's piss poor. It's real bad. Real bad.
Too. General Jack Keane, thanks so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart.
Brian Kilmeade. How is it funny every time, dude? Oh my God. America supports 73% of the world's most brutal dictatorships to the Hill. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dude, what do you mean? Let's send another 20 quintillion to Israel. Though. Another 8 quintillion to Israel. Like, genuine good faith. Genuine good faith. If you do feel like America has the capability to fix Iran by removing the religious authorities in power, I would like you to pull me up examples of the United States fixing other countries in that fashion. I would like to see America's track record in the positive. I want to see the good coup list. Yeah, I want to see what the United States does that's positive for other countries, excuse me. Dude, don't bring up Germany, dude. Oh my God. Don't bring up Japan did not have a religious authority in power that the people despised. That's not what. And we did not fix Germany. In fact, because of Germany's actions, Germany was decimated after World War II. We did not, help out there. That's not that's not what happened post World War II. Have we not heard of the Berlin Wall? What am I? What is going on? We dropped atom bombs on Japan. What? The fact that those nations recovered is more of a testament of the power of those nations, that they recovered despite all the shit we did there. The fact that Japan recovered is it's because I understand Germany recovering. It's it's smack dab right there in the middle. It's kind of, it makes more sense. Japan being its own collection of islands. I'm honestly genuinely surprised and shocked that Japan was able to recover and in a lot of ways outperform a lot of other countries. Despite the fact that we firebombed the shit out of Japan, despite the fact that we nuked them twice because one wasn't enough, even though we didn't even have to do the first one. Despite the fact that we put the rest of them that were in the US in internment camps. That they were able to recover despite all of that. That was not that. That's its own wonder. Just, you know, for good measure. We have to destroy them to build them back up, Smile. Aren't there still like 40 US bases in Japan now? I don't know the exact number. So anyways, yeah. 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 America has a really bad track record with helping countries. We're not good at it. Honestly, the one instance so far that we've actually done help has been Ukraine, but that's because of the US's hate for like Russia and Putin. And many argue the protection of like democracy in Europe. And we're not really helping Ukraine so much as making sure to demolish Russia. Key most important factor there is we are not deploying troops there. We're giving them weapons, right? It's only the wider EU risk, yeah. Aren't helping as much as utilizing their man force, yeah. Yeah. You ever hear about the guy who survived the first nuke and then made it back to work to explain what happened in America? When America dropped the second nuke? Yes. I've heard that story. Planet Money had a really good video. I think was it Planet Money? An NPR article that I was listening to. But there was a story of a guy who survived the first nuke, shows up to work to be like, dude, sorry I'm late. You'll never believe what happened. America nuked us and then got nuked again. And he was like outside of the immediate zone where, you know, the explosion just kills you. But he was close enough that he got the radiation. So he ended up dying, I think, of some form or maybe multiple forms of cancer. That is, if I may, that is crazy, by the way. Like, that's crazy. That's insane. Japan was literally offering surrender, but Truman wanted to test the bomb. I've said it a million times before. You know what? Maybe on our list, because one of these days I want to do like a documentary stream where we just watch a bunch of things that I would consider to be documentaries or actual documentaries. I want to watch Sean's video on Japan with you guys. For anyone who hasn't seen it, it's this video. BreadTuber Sean has a really good video on dropping the bomb Hiroshima and Nagasaki, basically talking about, it's a 2.5 hour video, really well done. I've talked about it many times, and maybe we can finally watch it together, because I assume most of you guys maybe haven't seen it. I guess like ones if you've seen it, twos if you haven't seen it. But we did not. America justifies dropping those nukes by saying that we ended the war sooner and we would have had more deaths if not for nuking Japan. Unfortunately, that's not true. And unfortunately, they were already going to surrender.
Hello, everyone.
They were not going to keep fighting. So yeah, I think that one might be a good video to watch with you guys. I think it's a really good video on how American schooling is like so dog shit. And once you realize that like American schooling is lied to you on so many different fronts. I mean, I grew up in New York City, progressive city, very blue city. And when I was being taught in elementary school about indigenous people, I thought, okay, forgive me. Please don't murder me for being wrong at like 9 years old or whatever. I thought indigenous people were all wiped out. Like they were taught right after ancient Egyptians. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess they all died. Yeah. Wow. America, I guess, but they were spreading the diseases. So, I mean, we were spreading it, but they were like blood sacrifices or something. So yeah, they teach it as if indigenous people don't currently live today. As if indigenous people don't currently today fight for their right to exist. Fight for their, what would be the correct term? Lands to be protected. To not be polluted by U.S. power. Mount Rushmore, for example. My most anti-American take is that I think Mount Rushmore should be torn to the ground and given back to indigenous people. Like, I don't give a fuck about those 4 losers on a rock. That was a holy ground that was of significant importance to indigenous people and is still of significant importance to indigenous people. And a big reason that we even carved their stupid fucking faces in the wall was as a form of disrespect to indigenous people. What is it currently being used for? What's it being used for? Fucking nothing. It's being used for nothing. It's being used for some stupid fucking... No. We have 100 pictures of that thing. Give it to them. Give them some TNT. Let them decide what they want to do with it. Okay? I say, you fucking... Let's give them a bunch of Sharpies. Maybe spray paint bottles. Maybe some TNT. And we can let them decide what they want to do with it. If they want to keep the heads, go for it. If they want to draw some dicks on their faces, go for it. I think it's their right to do what they want to do with it. But to desecrate this nation, well, not nation, but these people's holy ground. And it's not even like, I think conversations can get tricky, or people can feel like conversations can get tricky when people are currently living on land that belong to other people, which is the case for all of the United States. No one is living on that land. We can give it to them any second we want. No one would be harmed. Conversations can get tricky when it's like, oh, this city of like 5 million people was this holy land to these people. And it's definitely wrong to make all these people refugees of like, I don't know, Chicago or something. Okay, maybe we can come up with some other solution to remedy this wrong that occurred ages ago. Because it should be remedied, and we have a responsibility to remedy it. In instances where there's no one living on the land, it feels like the solution is very simple. Just give it back. Huh? Just give it back. Like, what? What the fuck? It's crazy to me. It's insane to me. They're so stingy. Yeah, no, don't worry, dude. We need that national park. We need it. As if, and you know the worst part? Sorry, I'm ranting about how much I hate the United States. The worst part? This is the part that gets me the most mad. The United States, the land that the United States is on, is some of the most beautiful land on earth. Like, it is gorgeous that we get to have so many different biomes that have created so many gorgeous pieces of land, and we have destroyed them. Or we don't appreciate them and instead put giant fucking Walmarts nearby. Like, I get why the British people saw America and they were like, dude, we gotta move. No, we gotta move. I don't wanna live in a cold, wet marshland till I die. The Americas are pretty gorgeous, man. I don't want to live there anymore, man. I'm tired of, what is it called? Haggis? What's that one? I think it's technically a Scottish food. Haggis. I don't want to eat that anymore, man. They got corn. They got tomatoes out here. We gotta move. We gotta, bro. I don't care. If we don't make it to paradise, we can die on the way to paradise. We have like the gorgeous mountains that exist in the United States.
There was a good TikTok of Starbucks in Europe being next to art and castles, and then Starbucks in America being next to parking lots and Publix.
Haggis is pretty good. To be fair, I didn't eat it. You're right. Let me see if I can find one sec. I want to see if I can find some pictures and stuff. Like, dude. The fact that the Grand Canyons exist. On the land that we happen to be born on. By happen to be born on, I'm saying, like, for example, most Americans that live today, you didn't choose your spawn point. You just were born here. That's what I mean when I say that. Yellowstone Park. Yosemite. All of the gorgeous mountains that we have, like the Appalachian Mountains or like the Colorado Mountains, or even like the fucking hills that are in LA that are gorgeous. The fact that we're like on the corner of Niagara Falls, sharing it with Canada, basically. The Gulf Stream waters. We have so much beautiful, gorgeous land. And what do we do with it? We carve some ugly, stupid-ass faces on it. Just to take it away from other people. Fucking so stupid, dude. I hate this country. Grr. Drill, baby, drill. Oh, sorry, your water is getting polluted? Too bad. We need to drill. We need to frack here. Earthquakes? Don't worry about it. Pollution? Don't worry about it. Water quality? Don't worry about it. Anyways, 8 trillion to Israel. Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Hashim Ahalbara.
Hassan won't be there, finally. The worst part about saying that sentence is that in my head, it's so obviously a joke, but then there are people that honestly, genuinely believe that. And they're like, I hate that guy, Hassan. He's the worst. Urgh. It's like, what?
Trained has ended, and that any more Israeli attacks will be met with what it terms an unconventional response, including the targeting of infrastructure. In the message, Iran stressed it does not want a regional war, but says Israel and what it calls its unbridled madness must be curbed. So what's next? Is Netanyahu trying to provoke Iran into war, which would then involve the US and Western allies in a wider conflict? What is Iran's strategy and its military capability? Can a path to peace be found, or are we already on the road to a wider war? We'll speak to our guests in a few moments, but first, this report from Sarah Gill.
On Tuesday, Iran attacked Israel. Balls of fire lit up the night sky above Tel Aviv. Tehran says it was in response to the assassinations of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh. But Iran has reiterated both indirectly to the US and on an official state visit to Qatar that it does not want a regional war.
We are not in pursuit of war with Israel. They promised us peace, but Israel has terrorized our guests in Tehran during our presidential inauguration. We want to establish peace. If you disagree, peace will not be established.
There are no such calls from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's painted Iran as Israel's #1 enemy throughout his entire political career. Just a week ago, he told the UN Iran was building ballistic missiles to threaten the entire world. Tehran denies its nuclear program is for military purposes. Netanyahu also says Israel is ready to attack again.
I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East.
In nearly a year of war in Gaza,
The irony of calling, like, the leaders in Iran tyrants when you, Bibi Netanyahu, have unbelievably low support. And there were, not even that long ago, protests at your fucking door to step down. And ignoring all of those people and doing whatever the fuck you want is crazy.
Israeli military has killed more than 41,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children. And in Lebanon, Israeli air raids have displaced more than 1 million people. That's almost 20% of the population in a matter of weeks. The head of the UN says Israel's actions risk engulfing the region in a wider war involving international powers.
The raging fires in the Middle East are fast becoming an inferno. It's high time to stop the sickening cycle of escalation after escalation that is leading the people of the Middle East straight over the cliff.
US and European nations continue to supply weapons to Israel, even as they call for a ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza. And despite the pleas of the UN, there is no sign of an end to this cycle of intensifying violence. Sarah Gill, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guest from Tehran. We are joined by Mohammad Marandi, a professor of American Studies at the University of Tehran. He was also a media advisor to the Iranian negotiating team at the International Atomic Energy Agency. In Boston, Virginia, Thomas Pickering, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, who was also ambassador to Israel, Jordan, and Russia, among other countries too. In Tel Aviv, Gidi Levy, columnist at the Haaretz newspaper and author of the book The Punishment of Gaza. Thank you for joining us. Mohammed, what is the general feeling in Tehran? Is it that the Iranians believe they are on the verge of a war with Israel?
It is quite possible. Today, Ayatollah Khamenei led the Friday prayers, and I think this was perhaps the largest gathering of people that I've ever seen in Tehran, even though there were lots of online chatter about the Israeli regime striking the ceremony and the prayers. But we saw millions of people participate, and he was very strong and firm about what Iran will do. If the Israeli regime strikes Iran, if it escalates, Iran will strike much harder next time round. What we saw a few days ago was just the tip of the iceberg. And I think it's wise for people in Washington to yank hard on Netanyahu's leash. Otherwise, the price that the Israeli regime will pay will be much higher than anything it's ever had to pay before.
Thomas, the Iranians are defiant and so are the Israelis. Do you still believe that there is a wiggle room for any compromise or a political deal that could implement a ceasefire agreement?
I think that politically speaking, one can envisage compromises. The real problem, and your question is rightly directed at it, is there the will to move now? This is one of the worst, if not perhaps the worst situation we have seen in the Middle East in a very long while. It has the potential to produce a catastrophe, and that kind of catastrophe will affect people on both sides of any line you seek to draw.
Just a quick pause. Someone in chat posted this link. I'm like, oh, let's take a look. Let's see what this link is all about. When you hit translate on a Hebrew tweet, and it's a post of like KKK members wearing the hood, and I'm like, oh, well, what's the link? Okay, it's some, I don't know, I can't read this. Go back to Africa, you stinky monkey. Oh. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 Oh. Okay. Against my better judgment, I wanted to watch a little bit more Fox News, please. Guys, pray for me that it's not dog shit. It's gonna be bad. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, but they just reported on the US strikes Houthi targets in Yemen. Uh-oh.
Breaking right now out of the Middle East, U.S. defense officials confirming the U.S. has carried out strikes on several Houthi targets in Yemen. Let's get right to Jennifer Griffin. She's got the news live at the Pentagon for us. What do we know, Jennifer?
Uh-oh.
Well, Sandra, we have new details about these airstrikes. These are unusual airstrikes because the U.S. has not been striking at Houthi targets in Yemen for several months. And you'll remember that just a week ago, 3 U.S. warships came under attack by over a dozen ballistic and cruise missiles and drones fired by the Houthis, and there had been no response until now of that attack last Friday. We're told that these airstrikes in Yemen targeting Houthi weapon storage facilities and other areas, including the airport. There were 7 strikes at the airport in Hodeidah, which has been used as a transit point for weapons. We understand that this is not in retaliation for last week's attacks on those U.S. warships. The U.S. Navy warships managed to shoot down those dozen or so ballistic and cruise missiles last week. But what we have just learned is that these airstrikes carried out by the U.S. military from the air and from the sea concluded just a few moments ago. This also comes, remember, on Monday, Sandra, that the Houthis shot down an MQ-9 Reaper drone, a U.S. drone that was flying over Yemen. That is the 8th drone that has been shot down by the Houthis in the last year. Those drones are worth $32 million, so that's a big loss for the U.S. military. But what we can say right now is that U.S. airstrikes from warplanes as well as from the sea just struck about a dozen sites inside Yemen targeting Houthi strongholds. Sandra?
All right, Jennifer.
We put our Reaper drones above their skies, and then they took them down. So now we have to strike at them. We have to strike at the Houthis.
With that update live at the Pentagon for us, Jennifer, thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Steve Doocy. Stop clicking on the other. No, I wanted to listen to the no. Oh my God. Please give me the. I got all the foreplay and then I didn't get to come.
Breaking Fox News YouTube page to catch our.
Just struck about a dozen sites inside Yemen targeting Houthi strongholds. Sandra?
All right, Jennifer Griffin with that update live at the Pentagon for us. Jennifer, thank you.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
Yeah. I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our.
I'm definitely not doing that, but thank you. Oh my God. And I wanted to see this one.
After firing nearly 200 ballistic missiles at Israel, Iran Iran
Yeah, I'm sure if
How
we...
the fuck can anyone here, yeah, they shot our Reaper drones, and not think the U.S. isn't evil?
No. I'm sure if like Iran or Yemen in this instance, or you know, fuck it, why not? Lebanon put some Reaper drones in our skies, we would let them stay. Obviously.
The US of further action unless Israel's aggression is curbed. The world waits to see what Israel will do next as it continues bombing Gaza and Lebanon. Can peace prevail, or is a wider war more likely? This is Inside Story.
Remember when the U.S. went mental on the weather balloon? It was a Chinese weather balloon, okay?
Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Hashim Ahalbara. Iran fired almost 200 missiles at Israel. A big mistake for which Tehran will pay, says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Iran and the US don't have diplomatic relations, but Iranian sources have told Al Jazeera that a message has been sent to Washington. In it, Iran says the period of what it called unilateral self-restraint has ended, and that any more Israeli attacks will be met with what it terms an unconventional response, including the targeting of infrastructure. In the message, Iran stressed it does not want a regional war, but says Israel and what it calls its unbridled madness must be curbed. So what's next? Is Netanyahu trying to provoke Iran into war, which would then involve the US and Western allies in a wider conflict? What is Iran's strategy and its military capability? Can a path to peace be found, or are we already on the road to a wider war? We'll speak to our guests in a few moments, but first, this report from Sarah Gill.
On Tuesday, Iran attacked Israel. Balls of fire lit up the night sky above Tel Aviv. Tehran says it was in response to the assassinations of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and Hamas political chief Ismail Haniyeh. But Iran has reiterated both indirectly to the US and on an official state visit to Qatar that it does not want a regional war.
We are not in pursuit of war with Israel. They promised us peace, but Israel has terrorized our guests in Tehran during our presidential inauguration. We want to establish peace. If you disagree, peace will not be established.
There are no such calls from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's painted Iran as Israel's #1 enemy throughout his entire political career. Just a week ago, he told the UN Iran was building ballistic missiles to threaten the entire world. Tehran denies its nuclear program is for military purposes. Netanyahu also says Israel is ready to attack again.
I have a message for the tyrants of Tehran. If you strike us, we will strike you. There is no place in Iran that the long arm of Israel cannot reach. And that's true of the entire Middle East.
I mean, this article came out literally today. Israel is likely to mount a large-scale airstrike against Iran's oil industry and possibly a symbolic attack on a military-related target to its nuclear program, former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak has predicted. He said that there was no doubt that there would be an Israeli military response to Iran's assault on Tuesday with over 180 ballistic missiles, most of which were intercepted. If Iran isn't bluffing and they actually do plan on destroying as much of the oil facilities as they can and disrupting the global oil market, just get excited for gas to go to $7 again. Go fill up now, guys.
In nearly a year of war in Gaza, the Israeli military has killed more than 41,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children. And in Lebanon, Israeli air raids have displaced more than 1 million people. That's almost 20% of the population in a matter of weeks. The head of the UN says Israel's...
And it's not even just that. It's not even just that the attacks that they've carried out. It's also this shit. Video, Israel bombs Lebanon escape route after issuing evacuation order. And this video is of Al Jazeera's Imran Khan reports on how Israel has repeatedly attacked a main escape route for people in South Lebanon after issuing evacuation orders for dozens of towns and villages, forcibly displacing those who had not already left due to attacks in Hezbollah. Against Hezbollah, excuse me. Sulanai Princess, thank you for the 21 months.
51 towns and villages are now under Israeli evacuation orders across southern Lebanon and on the border, that 120-kilometer border with Israel that in many parts is still contested. Now, people are complying with these orders out of fear and out of panic. There has been so much artillery shelling coming from Israel, so many airstrikes coming from Israel that a lot of people had already left. But on the kind of outskirts of the border, coming slightly northern to where I am, there are a lot of Sunni villages, Christian villages, Druze villages who felt that they were isolated and didn't really have to move. As soon as Israel announced its ground invasion, people started to leave en masse. Now, this is one of the roads just behind me over there that you can
Dragon Army, thank you for the 37
use
months.
to get out of southern Lebanon. Now, the Israelis have bombed that road 3 times. The first time they did it was overnight, and then in the morning, the Lebanese army engineers did makeshift repairs to allow people to get out. Then they bombed it again. The Lebanese army engineers repaired it, makeshift as well, but they repaired it again, and then it was bombed again by the Israelis. Now, one Lebanese army engineer was actually injured in that last attack. The Lebanese army are now no longer repairing that road. But as a lifeline out, and you're under Israeli evacuation orders, just think about this. Would you risk your life knowing that there's an Israeli airstrike that could come in at any moment? Or would you stay in your village knowing that there could be an Israeli airstrike either near you or in the neighboring village? This is now the choice that people have.
Yeah. Let's go back to this video on could Israel and Iran go to war? I have the live footage of Al Jazeera up in case there's any further developments. This is so depressing. That's so depressing. 2024, humans still haven't figured out that killing is bad. I'm sure we'll get it any day now. Al Jazeera reporters in South Lebanon and the Dahiya have their blood type sewn onto the front of their press jackets. Cowards in Western newsrooms didn't do their jobs. They didn't challenge Israel's propaganda, and they failed their colleagues. This isn't normal. I think the fact that this current conflict, or rather since October 7th, we have seen, I think, the greatest number of medical staff and press and journalists attacked, injured, and killed. Should tell people all they need to know about the most moral army in the world.
Actions risk engulfing the region in a wider war involving international powers.
The raging fires in the Middle East are fast becoming an inferno. It's high time to stop the sickening cycle of escalation after escalation that is leading the people of the Middle East straight over the cliff.
US and European nations continue to supply weapons to Israel, even as they call for a ceasefire in Lebanon and Gaza. And despite the pleas of the UN, there is no sign of an end to this cycle of intensifying violence. Sarah Gill, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guest from Tehran. We are joined by Mohammad Marandi, a professor of American Studies at the University of Tehran. He was also a media advisor to the Iranian negotiating team at the International Atomic Energy Agency. In Boston, Virginia, Thomas Pickering, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, who was also ambassador to Israel, Jordan, and Russia, among other countries too. In Tel Aviv, Gidi Levy, columnist at the Haaretz newspaper and author of the book The Punishment of Gaza. Thank you for joining us. Mohammed, what is the general feeling in Tehran? Is it that the Iranians believe they are on the verge of a war with Israel?
It is quite possible. Today, Ayatollah Khamenei led the Friday prayers, and I think this was perhaps the largest gathering of people that I've ever seen in Tehran, even though there were lots of online chatter about the Israeli regime striking the ceremony and the prayers. But we saw millions of people participate, and he was very strong and firm about what Iran will do. If the Israeli regime strikes Iran, if it escalates, Iran will strike much harder next time round. What we saw a few days ago was just the tip of the iceberg. And I think it's wise for people in Washington to yank hard on Netanyahu's leash. Otherwise, the price that the Israeli regime will pay will be much higher than anything it's ever had to pay before.
Thomas, the Iranians are defiant and so are the Israelis. Do you still believe that there is a wiggle room for any compromise or a political deal that could implement a ceasefire agreement?
I think that politically speaking, one can envisage compromises. The real problem, and your question is rightly directed at it, is there the will to move now? And this is one of the worst, if not perhaps the worst situation we have seen in the Middle East in a very long while. It has the potential to produce a catastrophe, and that kind of catastrophe will affect people on both sides of any line you seek to draw in the midst of a conflict. And this has been deeply concerning. We are in a complicated situation in the United States with an election about the presidency, which is for us an existential question in many ways, just 30-some days away. Deeply affected by the situation in the Middle East, it is not something that can be easily put aside as having some serious influence both in the Middle East in the long term and in my own country in the immediate and long term.
Gideon, the threats made by Iranian President, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and the Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs, are they taken seriously by the establishment in Israel?
Yes, absolutely. Nobody can not take them seriously.
Oh,
because
yeah.
the situation is very, very serious. But taking seriously does not mean that Israel has second thoughts about striking back Iran. I say
What a joke, dude. What a fucking joke. For anyone who missed what he said, we take it very seriously. That doesn't mean we're going to change our behavior. It's like the equivalent of your professor talking to you and being like, listen, I need you to take this seriously. If you fail this final, you are being dropped from this class. Like, you are going to fail the class and then you're going to get dropped from the program. And you're like, of course I'm taking seriously. I'm not going to change how much I was going to study, though.
it's unfortunately so. But I don't see any chance that Israel will not retaliate on the attack of Tuesday evening. And if so, we are facing a great, huge regional danger.
Mm-hmm. Mohammed, at this particular moment, can we fairly say that the top priority for Iran now, because you have the Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs in Lebanon, is to try to ensure there is a deal to at least make sure that Hezbollah remains intact despite the string of setbacks is suffered over the last few weeks?
Have no doubt that Hezbollah is very powerful and that it is probably more powerful today than it was a couple of weeks ago. And this is not empty words. The Israeli regime murdered a few senior officials, military officials, but there are younger officers and hundreds of thousands of combatants ready. They have thousands of kilometers of tunnels across the south and central Lebanon and even in the north, and all of their strategic assets are untouched. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was a towering figure, but I think what they've done to him has made people more angry and more determined. As you probably know, I went to Beirut the day after the shock and awe airstrikes in the south and the east the day before Sayyid Hassan was murdered. And I've been there for a week. The resilience among the resistance and the supporters of the resistance is extraordinary. And the Israeli regime, I think, has miscalculated, but in their right now, or they've been drunk for a few days, but then the Iranian retaliation, I think, made them a bit more sober. And the defeats that they've had to witness on the border with Lebanon over the last few days, I think will make them even more sober. But as your guest rightly pointed,
I mean, we've known for a while that Israeli troops, even with all the American funding, they don't have the practice in ground invasions. They don't. It's why they've lost consistently. It's why they turn to collective punishment and just blowing shit up instead. It's because it's way easier to do.
pointed out, the regime in Tel Aviv is probably going to continue to escalate because this is not about the Israeli population. This is about Netanyahu and the people around him who need to remain in power, and he wants to get the United States involved. Otherwise, he has lost.
IDF is only good at bullying weaker and defenseless citizens, or sorry, civilians. Actual resistance, they do terrible. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to draw the same parallel that everyone else draws, which is like American cops. American cops, when they actually have to stop an active shooter. I'm so scared. Oh my God, it's so scary. No. Someone else go in there and detain him, and then we can go in and pretend like we did it. American cops when a dog is barking. Dude, we gotta fucking kill this dog. Dude, we gotta... American cops when a homeless person is existing. Dude, we gotta kill this guy. We gotta... I'm scared for my life right now. I'm scared. Like... It's very different when the people you're fighting fight back. American cops are trained by the IDF, yeah? What? No. It must be a coincidence. Total coincidence. Or when acorns are falling, yeah. Those acorns are really scary, okay? That acorn sounded a lot like a black person existing near me, and I had to shoot my gun 500 times. Shots fired! Shots fired! What if he was allergic, huh? What if he had a nut allergy? Then what? Wouldn't be so funny now, huh? Wouldn't be. I bet you people are sick. I bet you think that if he had a nut allergy and he died because of the acorn, you would have been pro acorn in that instance. Wouldn't you? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Local cop killed by D's nuts. You're sick, chatter. You're fucking sick, dude. You're sick. This is like, by the way, off the back of this shit that happened yesterday. I guess like ones if you've seen this one, twos if you haven't seen it, this story. It's kind of gotten like missed in all of the news regarding Lebanon and Iran, but Israel kills 18 Palestinians in airstrike in Tulkarm, which is a city in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank. At least 18 people were killed and several others were injured on Thursday night in an airstrike launched by an Israeli F-16 fighter jet that targeted a coffee shop in the Tulkarm refugee camp in the northern occupied West Bank. A family of 4, including 2 children, was killed in the aggression. Aerial aggression marked Israel's first employment of an Israeli warplane in the occupied West Bank in 2 decades, which analysts perceived as a dangerous escalation. Yeah, send like a ground team to go get the top commander, to get one of the top commanders of Hamas. No, just bomb it instead. You know what? I think Americans need to start doing this too. We have a school shooter. Why don't we just airstrike the school? Don't worry, guys. We're going to get the shooter. Okay, a couple kids might die too, but like, we got the shooter. We did it. You want us to send a SWAT team in to try and make sure that there are as little civilians dead as possible? But it's so much easier to just airstrike it instead. What? But the school shooter is using the kids as human shields, which means we're allowed to kill those children. Right? That's what it says here in the genocide handbook. I mean, in the like, in what world is this acceptable? Like, what universe is this acceptable? Where instead of sending a team in to this coffee shop to get this Zahi Yasser Abdel, oh my God, Al-Arsek Mufi, so many words for one name, who was a top commander of the Palestinian Islamic resistance movement Hamas in Tulkarm, along with other fighters. Why send in IDF members who are geared up and suited up for a mission to detain just the people who are Hamas? Why do you have to airstrike them? Like, like, what the fuck? We would not think this is acceptable in any other universe, in any other instance. But it's okay to do it when there are the brown people that we don't care about, when the coffee was Hamas, apparently. They bombed the coffee shop because it was giving Hamas coffee to stay awake and aware. If you think about it, the coffee was trying to help Hamas members. So it was basically a Hamas coffee shop. And everyone going there was supporting the Hamas coffee shop by giving them money to continue to stay in business. So all of those people were actually basically Hamas supporters. Like, I promise you, if this shit happened in the United States with like an active shooter, people would like, I'm pretty sure people would riot. I mean, you guys have seen what happened after Sandy Hook with Alex Jones. That Alex Jones went on and said that these are crisis actors, and now he's lost everything. He even lost his fucking show InfoWars. Can you imagine the uproar in the United States if America airstriked a fucking school to say, we did it, we got the shooters? It would cause carnage in the United States. It would be insane. It does depend on the average melanin count of the kids killed. Yes, you are right. But I think any kids killed, or anyone, even like if they bombed a fucking mall or some shit, if they airstriked a mall, even that. Like, it's insane. It's like crazy. It's so insane to me that it doesn't matter that those people died because they got the Hamas target. And that other people will see this shit and be like, no, what are you talking about? Israel's based. They're based, man. Look at how good they are at killing these people. Can you imagine if your like family went to go get coffee and then you have to find out on your phone that Canada airstrike them for the people living in the United States? That your family's gone now because Canada airstrike them? because there was a terrorist in that building, because there was a shooter in that building. That they didn't even bother trying to send units in. That you just lost your family because they didn't feel like doing it and they just decided to airstrike instead. That would be crazy. That would be insane. That would be so fucking crazy. You just like, one day you're like, your wife and kids don't come home because they got airstriked, because they happened to get unlucky and be somewhere. And it's not that the shooter killed them, because I think that's like its own set of grief. It's that the country that has control over your resources decided your family didn't matter enough to send in troops. Like, what the fuck? It's insane. It's insane. It's so crazy to me. But, oh, it's just 18 Palestinians. 40,000 of them died. What's another 18? The massacre was strongly condemned by the Palestinian presidency, which also held the United States responsible for providing Israel with the military and political support, encouraging it to continue its genocide against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip and occupied West Bank for nearly 1 year. Moreover, the Palestinian government issued a statement on Friday calling the international community, humanitarian and human rights organizations to intervene and stop the daily atrocities committed by the IOF. Israeli Offense Force. Against the Palestinian people at a time when the majority of the world voted in favor of the UN General Assembly resolution adopting the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice calling for an end to the occupation within 12 months. This massacre highlights Israel's disregard for international resolutions and its operations as an entity above the law. Like, sorry, occupying. Sorry. Occupying. Like, it would be one thing if these civilians were killed despite them sending in IDF members on the ground. That would be one thing. But the problem is, one IDF soldier is still just one Israeli, and one Israeli is not worth losing for 18 Palestinians. Like, Israel's done the math, and in their mind, one person who is supposed to be an active combatant, they are still important than civilians. Which is insane. Which is just crazy. Again, can you imagine if, like, this was happening in the United States? And we were like, yeah, here's the thing. Yeah, we know that that's like a SWAT team member. And, like, this is, like, their whole job and everything. And they've got, like, armor. And they've got, like, guns. The problem is that the SWAT member is still a human being. And those people are, like, barely human beings. So we have, like, a 1 to 100 conversion rate. And if we have to lose even one soldier, that would be really bad. We would rather just kill 100 of you guys. And it's, like, totally fine. It's crazy. It's just insane.
Place between the Syrian Judaidah Yabus and the Lebanese Al-Masnat crossings. Tens of thousands of displaced people have been using this highway to get to Syria to escape the air raids in Lebanon. Asad Beg has more from the Masnat border crossing on the Lebanese side.
On the early hours of Friday morning, Israeli airstrikes, a number of Israeli airstrikes hit this main road between the Lebanese border and the Syrian border. Now, this is the main route for people trying to escape Lebanon. And these craters are so vast that it spans the entire length of the road, essentially stopping any sort of vehicles either crossing into Syria or from Syria into Lebanon. Now, the Israeli army had accused Hezbollah of using this crossing to get weapons into Lebanon. Now, the Lebanese authorities had said that this border crossing is under the control of the state and basically denied those allegations. And according to Lebanese authorities, over the last 10 days, 300,000 people Many of them Syrian refugees have crossed back into Syria. Many of these people had escaped war-torn Syria to find a home in Lebanon. Some of the children have known nothing except Lebanon, born and bred here. But now, because of the conflict here, because of the intensity of the Israeli bombardment in the south, in Beirut, in Beqa, many would rather take their chances.
Like, this is cool, US? This is you don't mind giving military weapons to this country? These people are trying to leave and fuck it, just bomb them on their way out.
Back in Syria. And now what they're having to do is traverse these massive craters. Vehicles drop them off on this side. Children, women, men having to carry their luggage and their belongings around this crater. Some have vehicles waiting on the other side, others don't. Others have to walk that entire length. And the question is, what is Israel trying to do? They have their troops invading in the south. They have threatened any aircraft that they deem hostile from landing in Beirut. All but one airline is operating, I believe. And now this main road has been cut off, making that escape from the conflict in Lebanon for those people all that much more difficult. Asad Beg, Al Jazeera, from the Lebanese-Syrian border.
I want to turn to some other developments because Israel has said that 2 of its soldiers were killed in a drone strike in the occupied Golan Heights. These drones were fired from Iraq. Mahmoud Abdul Wahid is standing by for us in Baghdad. First, though, let's head to Hamda Salhout, who's in Jordan's.
I can't help thinking about what this is all going to lead to. The U.S. will face very bad consequences, and so will Israel in the long run. This is like a sure way to make the world violently hate the U.S. IMO. I mean, a lot of these countries already despise the U.S., rightfully so, in my opinion.
Capital Amman, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting from there. What is the Israeli army saying about this attack, which originated in Iraq?
Well, the Israeli military has confirmed that 2 soldiers were killed and 24 others injured after a drone was launched by the Islamic resistance in Iraq and landed and detonated at a military base. According to Army radio, there were 2 drones that were launched, one of which intercepted by the Israeli Air Force, and the second one actually making impact in military infrastructure. The military has said they are conducting a probe about this, but their initial findings had found that it was launched from Iraq and was able to reach all the way to the occupied Golan Heights, killing 2 soldiers and wounding 24 others. This is quite significant because this is the first time an attack by any sort of forces in Iraq has caused any casualties in Israel. Mariam?
All right, thank you very much, Hamda Salhout in Amman, Jordan. Thanks for that, Hamda. Let's head to Baghdad now. Mahmoud Abdul Wahid standing by. What reaction there from Baghdad about these drones that targeted Israeli soldiers in the occupied Golan Heights? What are they saying about this?
Well, the Islamic resistance in Iraq says it targeted 3 different locations in northern Israel with in 3 different operations with drones. They say that this attack comes in retaliation for the murder of children and women by Israel's military campaign against Gaza. They say also they're vowing to continue their attacks against Israeli
All right, Mahmoud, sorry to jump in there, but let's head to the White House now. President Joe Biden is speaking.
Sign any diplomatic agreement prior to the election, which is what you have been calling for so long, potentially to try to influence the result. Do you agree? Do you have any worries that Netanyahu may be trying to influence the election and that's why he has not agreed to a diplomatic solution?
No administration has helped Israel more than I have. None. 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 And I think Bibi should remember that. And whether he's trying to influence the election or not, I don't know, but I'm not counting on that.
You've said many times recently that you want to speak to him, that you
No,
plan
I
to.
didn't say plan to. I just say want to.
You don't want to?
No, I didn't say that. You're making it sound like I'm seeking and then speaking. I'm assuming when
Holy shit.
they make the judgment of how they're going to respond, we will
Holy
then have a discussion.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
What the fuck did he say? We gotta go back.
Want to.
You don't want to?
No, I didn't say that. You're making it sound like I'm seeking and then speaking. I'm assuming when they make the judgment of how they're going to respond, we will then have a discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for being here. What are you advising the Israelis to do in
Everybody
terms of
knows
their
what that means.
retaliation to Iran? And at this point, you still haven't spoken to Netanyahu. Is it fair to say that you have little personal influence over what he decides to do?
No. Look, our teams are in contact 12 hours a day. They're constantly in contact. I've already had my presidential daily brief. We've already had interface between our military, the diplomats. It's in constant contact. They are trying to figure out, and this is high holidays as well. They're not going to make a decision immediately. And so we're going to wait to see when they want to talk.
But over the past few months, they've consistently defied your administration's own advice. So do you believe that the Israelis are going to listen to the advice you're giving them?
What I know is the plan that I put together received the support of the UN Security Council, the vast majority of our allies around the world, as a way to bring this to an end. Look, the Israelis have every right to respond to the vicious attacks on them, not just from the Iranians, but from everyone from Hezbollah to Houthis to anyway. And but the fact is that they have to be very much more careful about dealing with civilian casualties.
So how should they respond? You expressed concerns about attacks on Iranian oil facilities. How should they respond?
That's between me and them.
All right, we got to move on. Go ahead, Tam.
The election is a month away. One, I'd like to know how you're feeling about how this election is going. And then also, do you have confidence that it will be a free and fair election and that it will be peaceful?
Two separate questions.
Very much.
I'm confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it'll be peaceful. The things that Trump has said and the things that he said last time out when he didn't like the outcome of the election were very dangerous. If you notice, I noticed that the vice presidential Republican candidate did not say he'd accept the outcome of the election. They haven't even accepted the outcome of the last election. So I'm concerned about what they're going to do.
Are you making any preparations, getting security briefings related to domestic security?
I always get those briefings.
All right, we got to move on. Go ahead, Keila, and then we have to do a couple more.
Hi, Mr. President. When are you considering imposing sanctions on Iran, and would you include oil in those sanctions?
That's under consideration right now, the whole thing. I'm not going to discuss that now.
And just on your comments yesterday on the port strike, you said, by the grace of God, it's going to hold. Is there any reason you think that this
there's more to do.
suspension?
A month from now, there's more to do in terms of everything from the whole notion of mechanization of the ports and the like. There's more to resolve.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Thanks, Green. Thank you, Mr. President. Last night you said that there's still a lot to do to avoid an all-out war in the Middle East. I mean, firstly, aren't we pretty close to that definition already? And secondly, what can you really do to stop that happening?
There's a lot we are doing. The main thing we can do is try to rally the rest of the world and our allies into participating like the French are in Lebanon and other places to tamp this down. And
What are you doing and what will you be doing to prevent an all-out war? We're going to get our allies and we're going to temper it down.
when you have proxies as irrational as Hezbollah and the Houthis, and it's a hard thing to determine.
He said, what? Oh my God, dude, why? Why is this crypt keeper our fucking president? Why? He's so old, he needs to have a babysitter on call to call on reporters and say that's enough, we're short on time, we only have 12 hours of nap time anyway.
I gotta go, Kim.
I know. It's time to bed, go to bed.
I said I'd take a couple questions.
He's literally like, I gotta go to bed. Grandpa needs to go to bed. Look, they hired this woman, this war reporter. She's fucking pulling him to bed.
All right, you're the last.
I think she's increasing her credibility.
You have to take some more. Toulouse, you're going to be the last one.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for spending some time here with us. There have obviously been a number of crises that the country has been facing over the past several days with the hurricane, with support strike with the situation in the Middle East. Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass.
What?
And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
Okay. She helped with all the laws.
Nandita, sir, no, sir. I didn't call on you, sir. I didn't call on you. Nandita,
Thank you.
Nandita, go, Nandita.
Mr. President.
Pope Francis going for a day of prayer and fasting.
Prayer and fasting this Monday, October 7th. Your reaction, sir?
I will prayer and fast.
Okay, that's acceptable to you in terms of Israel's response. How long are you okay with Israel bombing Lebanon? What is acceptable to you? All right, guys, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Oh, she tried to pull that question for a second.
With Israel bombing Lebanon.
Are you okay with Israel bombing Lebanon? Look at his response.
What is acceptable to you? All right, guys, that's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So we've just been listening to US President Joe Biden answering questions.
What is Biden in terms of religion? I don't want to make anyone mad. I'm not good at remembering whether someone's Catholic or Christian. I'm gonna be honest. I just know that he's Irish. And I know people get really mad when you say that they're Catholic, but they're actually Christian, or the other way around. He's Irish Catholic. What's the difference? Okay, I said that to someone who was like Orthodox Christian once, and they they were one step from beating the shit out of me. Okay. Okay. They're like, my church is very different from that church. It's like, okay. My bad, dude. My bad. Sorry. Christ. I'm sorry. The base lore is the same. Okay. My bad. You guys ever seen that meme that's like, Christians, if Christians are right about hell? You know what I'm talking about? Ones if you know what I'm talking about.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. What is acceptable to you? All right, guys.
This one. Except change the text to say Catholics if Catholics are right. To smile about the bombing happening in Lebanon.
That's it. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So we've just been listening to US President Joe Biden answering questions there from reporters about the prospect of a fast-paced regional conflict essentially spiraling out of control. He is taking questions from some very enthusiastic reporters in the room who are really pressing him on what he is doing to stop a wider war in the region, what he is doing in terms of exercising his influence and leverage on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to bring about a diplomatic solution. And he was also asked about whether he would believe the Israelis would listen to the advice that Washington is giving them at this point. And he just reiterated that they had come up with a plan that had been supported by the United Nations Security Council and the majority of their allies around the world, a plan for there to be a ceasefire in Gaza. These are faltering diplomatic efforts that have been led by America, Egypt and Qatar, but have failed to bring about a ceasefire, cessation of hostilities in Gaza, because the Israelis have repeatedly refused to agree to this plan. They have made new demands that would essentially consolidate their presence inside Gaza, and they want those conditions to be enshrined in any sort of ceasefire. But he was also asked about whether or not Netanyahu is trying to influence the election. But actually, I think we have Patty Culhane with us. Patty Culhane is, well, you know what? We'll get to Patty Culhane very shortly. She's reporting to us from Washington. But at one point, we did hear that President Joe Biden was pressed on whether Netanyahu was trying to influence the election in some way. And this really an allusion to the Israelis stoking the conflict in the region. We have seen an expansion of bombing raids beyond Gaza, but also now spreading to Lebanon, Yemen, Syria, and there is a great deal of anticipation as to how Israel is now going to respond to a ballistic missile attack by Iran, and whether or not that could include any direct attacks by Israel on Iran. Let's speak to Patty Culhane. She's been cleared now and joins us. And so, Patty, perhaps you could run us through some of the main points raised by reporters and whether or not we managed to learn anything from President Biden about Washington's plan to tackle what is happening in the Middle East now.
Well, I think what the most striking thing is what he didn't say. He didn't really use any of his leverage to publicly try to pressure Israel to back down on any of the many fronts that it's facing now. He made it seem as if the attack on Iran is inevitable.
Yeah. I love going to war in the Middle East. It's my favorite, dude. It's so good. I just fucking love war. 12th Doctor, thank you so much for the 11 months of Prime.
So that tells me that the U.S. is not telling the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to back down. He talked about oil terminals. And this has been a huge question because after he made what seemed to be offhanded remarks yesterday, heading to the helicopter, he said something about possibly not attacking nuclear sites, but something possibly oil related. We saw the price of oil shoot up because remember, this is election year. The president does not want high gas prices. But he talked about if he were in their shoes, he might consider striking oil terminals, not oil fields. It'd be interesting to see what the market does in response to that. So again, what's most telling is what he didn't say. He didn't say, stop in Lebanon, stop in Syria, stop in Iran.
No, he was. He certainly didn't. No bold statements to come out with that, Patty. But maybe if I can ask you, what about this question of whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to influence the election by escalating things in the region in a way that would benefit former President Donald Trump?
Well, I can tell you one thing that would decisively affect the election would be a wider war in the Middle East started on Joe Biden's watch. Democrats are already losing a lot of support among African Americans, among young people because of Biden's stance on Gaza. And you heard him just say right there, no president has ever been better for Israel than he has been. That is actually hurting him in the polls with those groups. A wider war would hurt him across the board. Americans are tired of wars in Iraq, in Afghanistan, the Afghanistan withdrawal, that chaotic scene. That's when we saw Joe Biden's poll numbers plummet, and they never came back after that.
Stacey, yeah, just about, yeah.
So if U.S. troops were to be involved, that would be a game changer, I think, for this election. I don't think people would really make a difference between Biden or Kamala Harris and Biden. Donald Trump obviously says that he believes Israel has a right to defend itself. So there's not a whole lot of variation there between how the candidates would approach the situation. That said, if U.S. troops, and there are a lot of U.S. troops in the region right now, about 40,000, they're sending thousands more. There's a lot of ships. And so really the question is, would the U.S. back Israel if it did get into a wider war with Iran? We've been asking that question at the Pentagon repeatedly. They simply will not answer the question. Obviously, the U.S. has a commitment to Israel's defense. Would they help them on the offense? That is the huge question that nobody in Washington is answering right now.
Okay, thank you so much. Patty Culhane reporting to us from Washington. Thank you, Patty. Well, we're also following recent developments in Yemen. The United States says that it's conducted several airstrikes on Houthi targets across Yemen. There were 7 air attacks reported in the port city of Hodeidah, including at the airport. There was another on the city of Damar. These were the scenes in the capital, Sana'a, where 4 airstrikes were conducted in the Al Thawra district. Houthi fighters control large parts of the country. They've targeted more than 80 merchant vessels with missiles and drones after Israel launched its war on Gaza a year ago. Mohammed Al-Attab joins us now from Sana'a. First of all, can you tell us the latest about the sort of geographical concentration of these strikes? You know, what has been targeted in these attacks today?
Yes, according to the Houthi sources, they blame or the responsibility on the U.S.-British coalition. They say that the series airstrikes have hit Sana'a, Damar, Al-Bayda, also Al-Hodeidah. In Sana'a, they have targeted the maintenance military barracks with 3 air raids. Also in Damar, 1 air raid on an area in Damar, which is southern the capital Sana'a. Also to the east of Damar, which is another province, Al-Bayda, they have targeted or carried out 3 air strikes in an area in Al-Mukayras of Al-Bayda province, while in Al-Hodeidah they have carried out at least 7 air strikes that have hit Al-Khatib coastal area, which is near the Red Sea. Also, they have carried out other airstrikes on the Al-Hodeidah International Airport. These latest airstrikes have been blamed by the Houthis on the U.S.-British coalition, but the Britons they claim that they haven't participated or haven't any involvement in these airstrikes, while the U.S. Air Forces claim the responsibility on these latest airstrikes. These airstrikes have taken place just minutes after the conclusion of a big rally that have taken place in Sana'a in solidarity with Lebanon and Palestine, that they have also showed big support to the latest operations by the Houthis.
And tell us about American involvement in these strikes.
Yes, these strikes, according to Houthis, they blame the U.S. Air Forces on these latest air strikes. At the time, the Houthis also have carried out, according to their army spokesperson Yahya Saree, that they have carried out or participated in the Iranian ballistic missile attacks on Israel. The Saree says that they have participated with 3 ballistic missiles called Al-Quds Fifth, which he claimed also that these airstrikes or the ballistic missile attacks have not been revealed by the Israelis. Also, they have carried out another attack on a British oil tanker. They have distributed a video that showed their attack on this British oil tanker. Also, another attack, according to the Houthis army spokesperson, they have carried out against a target in Tel Aviv with using the Yafa drone. The Houthis spokesperson says that this Yafa drone has hit its target successfully. No confirmation by the Israeli side. So far, these latest developments and escalation in the region also have been confirmed that according to the Houthi leader, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, he says that the Israeli attack on Al-Hodeidah, which has claimed the lives of 7 people and also injured 57 people, others, would not deter them from their continued support and solidarity with the Palestinians and Lebanese until the end of the Israeli aggression against Gaza and Lebanon.
All right. Thank you very much, Mohammed Al-Aitab, joining us there from Sana'a, Yemen, where there have been a further round of airstrikes. I want to now speak to Francis J. Riccardione, a former U.S. ambassador to Egypt, Turkey and Afghanistan. He joins us now from Washington. It's good to have you on the News Hour. So what do you think is the view in Washington of the speed and scale of what is happening in the Middle East right now?
Canto, thank you for the 21 months.
Well, I think the president and other people in office have spoken to that. I'm not in office, can't speak to it. Clearly, though, it's one of dismay. No one likes to see so many innocent civilians on all sides suffering. That just sows the seeds of future war and escalation. So in general, it seems to me very clear that the American administration, much as most other governments in the region outside, don't want to see this escalate and continue. On the one hand.
So have you been disappointed? Forgive me, but so does that mean you disappointed that more hasn't been done to stop it from getting to this point?
I think we have to be realistic about what can be done and what is likely to happen. If you saw President Biden's press conference, people were asking him about the limits on American influence on the Israelis, etc. We're at a moment in this conflict where, despite internal political issues in Israel, the people seem united behind the idea that their country's very existence is in question or under threat by a couple of actors, one Iran and the other the Palestinians, or Hamas, let us say. And they seem to be in no
the
mood to step
Palestinians
back
would argue
from
the reverse
prosecuting
of that their existence is under threat because of the genocide in Gaza.
I love Al Jazeera.
Over the past year. But, you know, I'm curious. I mean, Ambassador, I would love to know your thoughts on the sort of recent diplomatic efforts, you know, that the Biden administration failed to broker a ceasefire and to manage the risk of a regional escalation. Could they not have, I mean, in terms of how things work in Washington, I know you say that you're not part of that establishment anymore, but just from the sort of inner workings, and if I can pick your brain, I mean, could they not have foreseen that it would get to this point, that if Gaza was allowed to continue, that it would inevitably fuel hostilities in the region?
I want to hear the fucking response to this.
What I believe the United States government sees, what this administration and all have seen, is that in the big picture strategy of Israel, there's an important flaw, and that is the idea that they can continue to be neither have a one-state solution that satisfies Palestinian demands and needs and rights, nor accept a two-state solution. And the United States has pushed consistently from one administration to another, really going back to the Carter administration, then implicitly, more recently explicitly, for a two-state solution. And the Israelis reject that. The Palestinians also, as you pointed out, feel they are in an existential struggle.
And
here's the thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you have extensive experience, ambassador to many countries. And so it is quite remarkable in some ways, you know, what we've seen over the past few months. And he was asked about it. President Biden was asked just in that press conference he gave about whether or not Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to influence the election in some way. I mean, are we in this quite remarkable situation where, you know, America's main ally in the Middle East could be trying to actively harm the sort of electoral political prospects of the president and his party?
I doubt that the Israelis or the Israeli government continue to prosecute this war in the way they're doing, principally or even much at all with an eye to the impact on American politics. They've shown they can count on the United States
Nah,
to.
dude, they're just doing it for the love of genocide, man. Israel they're just doing it for the love of the game.
Come in and support them, whether it's a Democratic administration or a Republican one. I do believe Netanyahu has very critical and serious internal political concerns if and when a ceasefire is reached, let us say when, and there may be a course
Can I ask you though, just very briefly,
resolution.
how humiliating was it though for Washington to see Prime Minister Netanyahu repeatedly reject their plan for a ceasefire?
I doubt anyone expects that the Israelis are going to simply obey Washington preferences. I believe they listen, but as they say, they take their own decisions. I don't think it shocks anyone in this administration that the Israelis at most might listen politely and then go about what they want to do. I don't think it's a matter of humiliation. I think it's frustrating, disappointing, annoying. But it doesn't. It's not a question of humiliation for this administration or any other.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. It's great to get you on the news hour, and we do appreciate it. Ambassador Francis J. Recadioni.
What a joke, dude. The equivalencies and pretending like Israel and Palestine are exactly the same, and that there's nothing that we can do about it. And they're just two countries that can't stop disagreeing. The fucking dishonest framing, dude, is enough to make someone lose it. What a joke, dude. What a joke. It's just so very complicated, guys. It's just really complicated. Isn't it really, really complicated, okay? It's just so complicated. We can't help it. We just can't do anything to help it, okay? You guys think about that? Did you consider that? Just such a tricky situation. Keep giving bombs to the people who are bombing civilians, or stop giving bombs to the people bombing civilians. Well, I don't know. We don't know yet. We don't know. We're still figuring it out, okay? We're still figuring it out. I'll let you guys know when we come to a conclusion on which one we should pick yet, okay? Which one we should pick. Just real tough.